The movie starts with a bare-knuckle fight, with spectators betting on their fighters. A woman named Frankie arrives, looking for Carter Ford. After a knockout, an unidentified man enters the ring, and the reigning fighter, terrified, forfeits the fight. The stranger takes the prize money, but is stabbed by a gambler who lost his bet. Frankie approaches the man and offers him $5,000 a week to protect her rowdy roadhouse in the Florida Keys, but he turns her down. She leaves him her number in case he changes his mind. Later, he contemplates suicide on a train track, but changes his mind at the last moment. After the close call, he decides to accept Frankie's offer. He reaches the place, and a girl named Charlie comes and tries to sell books to him. Charlie was the owner of the bookstore Boar. Her father joins them, and they have a brief conversation before he asks for directions to the Roadhouse. He finally reaches Roadhouse, and the place seems quite nice. Night comes, and the atmosphere of the place changes. People start fighting with one another. The place was kind of rowdy. A group of biker led by a guy named Dell comes and starts trashing the place. Then Dalton approaches them and politely tells them to come outside, but they refuse, so he went out to smash their bikes. The biker comes after him and they started to fight. He was quite good at fighting and manages to beat them all. After that, he takes them to the hospital, where he meets a fine nurse named Ellie, and she treats him from the knife wound he got earlier. Frankie seems very happy for having Dalton and gives his first paycheck for a week. Frankie also gives him permission to stay in her houseboat at the marina and warns him from the crocodile. His name was Elwood Dalton, a well-known UFC fighter, where he is seen in the UFC octagon fighting his opponent. A bartender wakes Dalton up with breakfast. After eating, he heads to the bookstore to find a computer. Some hooligans appear, but quickly leave when they spot Dalton. Later, the scene shifts to their boss, Brandt, on a yacht, furious at his goons for failing their job. The Roadhouse was always a rowdy place. Dalton teaches Billy some moves, and soon, Billy takes down a knife-wielding customer. After that, Billy handles the smaller troublemakers, and Dalton brings in Reef to help as a bouncer. Together, Billy and Reef proved to be quite effective at keeping order. Even the bikers were afraid of Dalton, and they stopped coming to the Roadhouse. Dalton always have dreams of his past, fighting in the octagon which hunts him. That day, he meets Ellie at a restaurant, and they have a great conversation. Frankie gave Dalton his second paycheck, and as he was headed to his place, a pickup truck accelerated towards him to kill him, but he manages to jump in the back of the truck, and he falls on the water. He reaches his boat. There Dell is seen waiting for him with a gun. Dell was the one who sent the driver to kill him and tells Dalton that it wasn't about him that they are after, but the Roadhouse. He distracts Dell and manages to hit him and throws him in the water, and the crocodile eats him. The next day, people are seen searching for Dell's body, but they couldn't find the body. Dalton went to the bookstore, and after that, as he was going back of fro, Brandt's men try to force Dalton to meet their boss, but he breaks one of their fingers and sends a message for Brandt to come to the Roadhouse instead. Suspicious of the attacks, Dalton asks Frankie for answers, but she stays silent. The next day, Ellie takes Dalton for a boat ride, and they enjoy a relaxing time on the ocean. Dalton reveals that Brandt is targeting the Roadhouse, and Ellie explains that Brandt's family built most of the glass key. When she probes into Dalton's past, he urges her to stay away from him, claiming he's not a good guy. But Ellie isn't bothered by his past, and they end up making out. A person is seen in Glass Key sent by Brandt's father, also known as Knox, to handle the situation, which his son couldn't handle. Knox was a brutal and ruthless person who will beat up anyone with his bare hand. Brandt arrives and started asking about him, and Knox tells him that his father had sent him to take care of the bouncer and to take control of the Roadhouse. Dalton returns from the date. Then the sheriff's deputy comes to question him about the other night. He agrees and goes with them. Sheriff comes, also known as Big Dick, and they started talking. Then they suddenly took him out of the car and starts hitting him and points the gun at him. Ellie arrives and slaps the sheriff and took Dalton away from them. Ellie tells Dalton that the sheriff was her dad, and he was working for Brant's father, and now he might be working for Brant. After that, Brant's subordinate is seen outside the bookstore to burn down the place. Dalton reaches the Roadhouse, and then Brant also comes along and started asking why a guy like him doing in this place. And he started showing Dalton his UFC fights where he killed his own friend and tries to taunt him. Then he goes off. After that, Brant sent Knox, along with his men, to beat up the bouncers and to take down the Roadhouse. Knox started smashing the bar along with Brant's men. Knox started calling Dalton's name. Dalton shows up, and they had a fight. They started exchanging fists. Knox was better fighter than Dalton. Dalton was quite beaten up. Then Knox forces him out of the bar. Dalton looked at him intensely and goes off. Ellie also comes along with the sheriffs, and she started treating the injured people. Dalton goes back to his place and started packing up. Frankie arrives and tells him the truth behind the attack on Roadhouse, saying that Brant wanted to build expensive resort, but the Roadhouse was on the way, so he started sending his goons to chase them away. But Dalton still went on his way. As he was going, he sees that the bookstore was burned down, so he changed his mind and headed towards Brant's place to teach them a lesson. Then Dalton saw as one of the person who burned down the bookstore, and as they were talking, he took out a knife and tried to kill Dalton, but he dodged and hit him in the throat that broke the hyoid bone, and then he died. Dalton took the body in the car. Then he saw one of Brant's men and asked him the location of Brant. He told Dalton that Brant was out of money and is borrowing from some shady guys tomorrow at Harvest Key. The next day, Dalton waited in a boat to steal the money from them. As Deputy Sheriff took the money and was leaving the place, he hit him unconscious and tied him up. Then he brought the body that he killed earlier and shoots with the sheriff's gun and hit the deputy in his head to cause him partial memory loss. Dalton reaches and is seen making dynamite in his boat. Sheriff arrives and tells Dalton that Brant has got Ellie, and he had to give him back his money by noon or he will kill her. Dalton agrees with him. Dalton takes Ellie's ex-boyfriend boat and headed towards Brant. He gets in the yacht, and Brant starts asking him about his money. Then Dalton tells that Big Dick looks too comfortable for his daughter to be kidnapped. Big Dick actually lied to him, but Brant tells Big Dick that he have actually taken his daughter and that he can take her back after he gets his money. Big Dick was not happy with Brant for double-crossing him. As they were talking, Knox approaches them with a boat, and as he was about to reach, Dalton presses the button, which detonates the dynamite that he brought in the boat earlier. Then Dalton head towards the cabin, searching for Ellie. Because of the blast, the yacht begins to sink. Finally, Dalton finds Ellie, but suddenly the window breaks, and they manage to get out of the yacht. At that time, Knox tries to hit Dalton with the boat, but he uses one of Brant's men as a shield and gets away from it. Ellie gets in one of the boat, but Brant happens to be there and takes Ellie with him. Knox tries to hit Dalton one more time, but Dalton manages to get a hold on the boat and gets in. After that, Dalton throws Knox out of the boat, but Knox grabs a rope attached to the boat and he tries to get in. Then Dalton chases after Brant. Brant accelerates the boat towards Dalton and the boat collides. But Dalton manages to jump on Brant's boat and starts fighting him. Since no one was steering the wheel, the boat crashes into the Roadhouse, but Ellie and Dalton manages to get out of the boat. Dalton comes searching for Brant and starts hitting him. Suddenly, Knox crashes the bar with a pickup truck, and they started to fight. Dalton was having a hard time fighting with Knox. Knox picks up a sharp wood and stabs Dalton in his stomach. Dalton was laying there, semi-conscious. At that moment, Brant comes and orders Knox to kill him, but Knox breaks Brant's neck and kills him. Knox grabs a sharp wood and head towards Dalton. But Dalton stops him and takes out the stick from his body and starts to stab Knox and kills him. Big Dick arrives and tells Dalton to get out of the town, and that he will cover him up. Finally, Dalton leaves the place, leaving the money in the bookstore for Charlie and her father. Thank you for watching Movie Mind. Subscribe for more update.